So good morning, everyone, and welcome to another lecture of our module, Evolutionary Economic Geography. Also, welcome to those that will watch and listen to this lecture later on. And we have another packet lecture with some busy slides and a couple of examples illustrating one or another concept. And for those that will listen to the lecture later on, feel free to drop me an email if you have questions regarding the content of the lecture, the structure, or if eventually you want to download one or another publication which I identify as a source in the slides, and you are not able to do, let me know, then I will try to do that. So only 3 lectures remaining after this one. And so far I'm quite happy with how the lectures have been progressing towards today, and certainly towards the end. And a bit less dynamic today than in comparison to previous one, and we will end up by talking about strategic spatial planning. And you may question already in advance why we'll be talking about this, and hopefully the slides before will emphasize or help to emphasize why I decided to bring strategic spatial planning and regional attractiveness strategies in this context. And but to reach that point, we have to recap the previous lecture and touch upon this approach to entrepreneurship in a spatial context, in a geographical context, and bring the concept of entrepreneurial region into the discussion, following what we discussed in the previous lecture, place-based innovation policies. And one of the questions that came from you was regarding precisely to what extent these policies intended to support entrepreneurship, the regional development, economic growth, I prefer to call socio-economic transformation, also deal with sustainability. Because most of them that are intended to support research and development, which will eventually lead to innovation processes and then to profit making. Indeed, a very relevant question, and I think the way we will evolve today from place-based to the entrepreneurial state, entrepreneurial region, and strategic spatial planning will help to highlight why we have these publicly funded policies supporting innovation that lead most of the times to profit. But then we have to have an open mind and understanding the different dimensions of these policies or their impacts, and about who wins and who loses when we discuss about that. And we talk that place-based policies are intended to promote entrepreneurship development, support innovation processes in a specific territories. So this is a localized policy. That's why it's called place-based. And very recently, the European Union, since 2009, the European Union has been integrating this place-based approach in their policies, fundamentally those linked to the cohesion policy, and the attached funding schemes such as the European Regional Development Fund and many other sub-schemes that exist in this direction. So the place-based innovation is innovation-driven policy intends to foster innovation within territories, not only lagging behind territories, but also across across the regions of the member states of the European Union. And the ultimate goal is to foster, to boost employment creation, but also support the maintenance of the jobs within these specific regions. So here, and then if you eventually decide to investigate the place-based applicability, the implementation of place-based, you have to embrace also a multidisciplinary points of view and approach the subject from different domains, understanding it that is not only to create new jobs, but also to maintain, to secure our talented, qualified workforce, but also continue having this continued process of fostering employment and retain people in those specific territories. prime goals elements here that you that you have to retain. We are talking about an overarching intervention of the public administration into the organization of the economic landscape. Okay, there are different critics, political economy. There are a number of critics within political economy literature that contest the support of the state towards entrepreneurship and innovation processes. That is always critic, and is important to know where these critics are located so we can better justify and pave the way to our line of thinking, line of reasoning when we are writing about this subject. So the goal of this place-based innovation policy is to boost entrepreneurship, support entrepreneurial development, and ultimately support the socio-economic transformation. And recently, because sustainability is a key to the organization of the society in general, there are new documents coming along intended to continue to continue developing the implementation of the place-based policy, but with sustainability preoccupations. And the challenge that remains at the European Union at this precise moment 2021 towards 2027, that this is the new European Union multi-annual financial framework, is to how to implement this in a way that the three principles of sustainability, of sustainable development, are maintained. The European Green Deal helps to translate and bring forward these policy-based, these place-based policies towards the present day, and integrated it within the goals of the European Green Deal. Just sustainability transition, supporting integrated development across the European member states. And again, the European Green Deal then feeds on the basis of the place-based innovation, and it intends to support a more systematic innovation process across the member states by highlighting, by emphasizing, by fostering technologies, the infrastructures, the skills of labor force, but also an important element, continue reinforcing the capacity, the decision-making capacity, and the capacity of intervene in a specific domain of local administrations, and support this entrepreneurship. Supporting entrepreneurship through a bottom-up approach, so an entrepreneurship that comes from the grassroots of the society, not determined by those that already have a consolidated position in the market or within certain industries. So we are talking about supporting startups, supporting the young generation in creating in developing their ideas towards business. But again, bear in mind that the number of critics can also be pointed out in this domain. Hopefully one of the examples will illustrate this. So we have policies, so a public administration intervention intended to support the entrepreneurship-led growth, which will lead to new businesses, eventually new paths of development, eventually new industries. So we are talking about a more capitalized domain of this place-based approach. But on the other hand, as I said, we also have to keep in mind that these policies, they intend also to support job creation, and then have work as an engine, as a catalyst of different dynamics within these territories, social dynamics, creating cultural centers, for example, or improving libraries, improving the school system and all the education system in this territory. So it's not only about the business, not only about supporting firms, trying to develop the creative process that helps entrepreneurs to go from an idea to a business in practice. Important also to bear in mind, because it's a preoccupation that I have across my modules, this one and the other one on sustainability, is to think about how this entails in other geographies. So in the European Union context, the one we are living in, or in the European context, mainly being member states or not, because these place-based policies also take shape in non-member states, this intervention of the public sector within innovation processes intended to support this entrepreneurship-led growth are called place-based. Elsewhere, they are just simply called innovation policies. And you also have innovation policies within the European Union not attached to this concept of place-based. Okay, there are different ways of approaching this subject of supporting regional development, supporting the development of innovation process within specific territories, urban regions formally constituted or the result of informal governance arrangements that lead to the creation of certain regions. They can also be called simply innovation policies, and elsewhere in the world, United States, Latin America, they are mostly called innovation policies, and some of them also have been developed in line with the core principles of the place-based policy as applied in the European Union since 2009. So the overarching goal of these innovation policies is to foster entrepreneurship in the localized context. Once again, focus on the cities and on the regions, and this implies identifying the regional potentials, the assets, tangible and intangible of these territories. Trying to recap here what we discussed earlier. And when we have this ecosystem somehow organized, and the policies are the policies that are then implemented help to boost entrepreneurship, but in a more systematic manner, not only as a hit and run process. So with some strategic thinking behind it, with some preoccupations to secure this development of entrepreneurship-led growth towards the years to come, then we can talk about regions, entrepreneurial regions within an entrepreneurial state. All of this requires not only a pure intervention of the state, but also requires, and we touch upon intensively about this, the role of the local institutions. Often the local institutions, they need to receive not only funding, but also a capacity. They need the state to open the possibilities for them to intervene in the organization of the economic landscape. And also these institutions, the literature tells us, they also play a role in fostering this place attachment, this sense of place that eventually will facilitate the engagement of potential entrepreneurs, of young generations will facilitate that engagement with more economic domains of the society. And then one domain of the literature talks about this entrepreneurship located in a specific region being then the result of place-based policies or other kind of innovation policies as the entrepreneurial state or entrepreneurial region. There are different discussions involving scales here. In the European context, a state assumes different dimensions. We can have a state in which regions they have no decision-making capacity, such as in Portugal, but you can also have a state in which the states have a strong decision-making capacity and they can decide their own development trajectory, such as in Austria, in Germany, and partly in the different well, with some differences in Spain with autonomous community. And then within these states we can have entrepreneurial regions, so one supports the other. We still need the role of the state, national government understood here, and the entrepreneurial regions. And although the roots go back in time in terms of literature, of theoretical discussions of the entrepreneurial state, this publication here, this book from Mariana Mazzucato, is a key reference if you intend to study, to investigate the role of the state, the role of the public administrations in fostering innovation and fostering entrepreneurial-led growth. And I was fortunate enough to be able to download the book as a PDF. And is archived in your OLAT platform. It's very easy to read, and provides really interesting insights into this role of the state in the innovation processes. So the entrepreneurial state shows the importance of the state intervention in the economy to foster radical technological innovations, mainly focus on the technological innovations. in different kind of domains purely for supporting communication, but also for medical purposes as well. So Mariana Mazzucato calls it the state, and please understand it, the state as the public administrations. And then they assume different structures. So it can be a ministry, can be a state secretary, can be a specific a public agency within the structure of the state. They have been behind every major technological innovation of the past. So yeah, here it is the start. We start entering a more tricky approach to this involvement of the public administrations. So if you think about the internet, all the physical structures that support the worldwide communication that we have today, developments in biotechnology, in robotics, in even all the smallest example you can give of the development of smartphones such as the iPhone. In all the Mariana Mazzucato explains that the state is behind all these developments through the past century, primarily since the end of the Second World War. So governments, through what we have been discussing here, through different initiatives, policies, place-based, other kind of policies, they promote this localized, okay, this geographical specific technological innovations to foster entrepreneurship. They can do it. They do this in two forms. One can be directly, another one indirectly. The directly is not always easy to grasp, and they are mainly attached to the funding schemes that the public administrations give or lend to some institutions, public, private, or semi-public, or the results of partnerships between public and privates. One of the examples that you read in the book is the creation of this defense agency in the United States in the period after the Second World War. So we have an historical event here impacting the creation of the agency, and this can be classified as a direct support from the state to programs of research and development, which will then lead to technological developments. Indirectly, and mostly of the cases, this happen through tax breaks, public procurement, facilitating the contracting of certain services or access to specific goods, but also is also related to the investment in infrastructures, being them hard infrastructures, roads, airports, train lines, and also soft infrastructures. If you think about optical fiber across territories, trying to improve other communication systems within a specific territory. And examples of this are Tesla and SpaceX, among many others, and this in the United States. So we have an indirectly public administration support towards the prime goal is to foster these technological innovation processes, and then eventually will lead to higher level, to entrepreneurship, and will lead to new firms, new businesses, and eventually new development paths within these territories. I believe that this may raising you with some questions. A couple of trying to push forward these examples. That directly happens mainly by giving direct funding to certain agencies, or creating them from scratch, or supporting those that are already exist, with a prime goal of fostering these technological developments. This happens, with this agency in the United States in '58, so in the period of the Second World War, and as a response to the development of the satellite industry in the Soviet Union during the same period. So as a response to the developments that were taking place elsewhere, technological developments that were taking place elsewhere, an administration, in this case the United States government, decided to create this agency to foster innovation process, and link it to this agency many other processes intended to support creativity and the development of ideas have been developed, linked to this agency. And the engine behind this agency was only public funding. So then they create this concept of blue sky thinking, then you can learn more in this link here, a process that is intended to foster creativity within a specific process and targeting it towards technological innovation processes. This only to give some examples of this, the role of the public administration in fostering technological innovation. Another example, also in line with this agency, was the creation of the Small Business Innovation Development Act. And here, the more distinctive element is that companies already consolidated in a market, they are called to support a certain funding scheme that was then used to incentivize the creation of small and medium-sized enterprises, and to support entrepreneurship of young generations to enter the business, and then continue this support towards a more consolidated stage within the industry or the market. And also Mazzucato points out that companies such as Apple, Compaq, and Intel, they benefit intensively from funding coming from these Small Business Innovation Development Act in the United States. So again, we have public intervention here indirectly leading to the creation of new firms, and then these firms, they because of a number of elements which we will need to go in more in depth to a case study analysis of their process, they will consolidate their position in the market. Another example that is also debated in the book, and if you are interested in these entrepreneurship processes, creativity, technological innovation process, I really invite you to read the book. An example that is often underlined in this book and also in other publications is the case of Apple and the role of Steve Jobs in this context, but also the role of the university within this region, and also the hand of the state in supporting the success of Apple. Also, Steve Jobs in earlier moments commented that the success of Apple is partly the result of not only the technical expertise of its staff, but also this ability to be a bit crazy in the process, takes risks, embrace challenges, and embrace change, and put the design also at the same level than the technological developments. However, what Mazzucato leads us to think about is that, can we simply justify the major success of companies such as Apple only because of this creative capacity, of this boldness of investing in and taking the risks in a very competitive market? Well, she tells that no, we have to go much more in depth and try to understand the roots of this success, of course. And so she suggests that we cannot only minimize the success of Apple to what Steve Jobs called in his delivered commencement address at the Stanford University in 2005 as this visionary thinking that contributed to them to develop their products with aggressive design in comparison to their competitors. So Mariana Mazzucato suggests that indeed this visionary capacity, this individual genius, this risk-taking attitude, indeed is fundamental to understand the success of Apple. But then places us as a researchers within economic geography in the kind of what she calls, and I try to illustrate here, the Apple's myth. So saying that, okay, let's truly understand the reasons behind this success, try to understand the elements that pave the way for them to secure that position in the market. And she points out that without a massive amount of public investment behind the computer per se, all the components of a computer, as well as the support of the state in the development of the internet, the success of Apple couldn't simply be achieved through this craziness and foolishness in taking the risks and putting the design at the same level than technological developments. So So again, she tries to illustrate, and into more detail in the book, which I won't bring it here, how Apple came to be what it is these days, this domaining, taking advantage of the technological developments and gaining this position in the market, that being one of the best sellers of smartphones worldwide. There's a combination. This is the result of a combination of that location in the Silicon Valley area, taking advantage of the technological developments in Stanford, that on one hand have been influenced by funding from the state and funding from the national governments, directly and indirectly in the improvement of soft and hard infrastructures. Hopefully, I'm being able to help you to grasp this core idea that the state, being in the United States or elsewhere, but all these examples, they require an in-depth case study, and being them in Japan, for example. So we really have to go in depth and trying to understand the factors behind their success. But most of them, they result of a tremendous groundwork by public entities that support that are the pillars of their technological developments. And this we can underpin the success of the iPhone and iPads on the state intervention regarding improvements of the internet, of the GPS technology, and other kind of communication technologies. Indeed, this attitude of taking the risks, embracing the business with visionary ways of thinking is indeed important, but also is important to have this groundwork done by the public governments. And in this case, we are talking about technology related with the communication. And if you remember the case of Northern Portugal, and one of the questions came precisely to in this regarding. So we have public money coming from primarily from the European Regional Development Fund, these 2020 strategies I showed to you. Indeed, they are using money coming from the European Union to support research and development that will lead to technological processes. And all of these are within this scheme of place-based innovation policies of the European Union. Indeed, they will lead to profits from the company itself, in this case, the ERT group, but also profits of those that are demanding their products, partly suppliers of the market, suppliers of the automobile sector. Indeed, will lead to profit, but also we have to think about that these are creating job opportunities for qualified workforce and also for less qualified workers that all these enterprises need to support their activities, and eventually will also lead to the creation of local dynamics within these territories. And then we'll see this in the next lecture. Then there is this corporate social responsibility. Partly of these companies, they are very rooted, because they come from a traditional sector, they are rooted in that specific territory. So they tend to engage in organizing sportive activities or cultural events, eventually give some founding to rebuilding a cultural center, and this happens quite remarkably in northern Portugal, for example. So there is indeed profit, public funding leading to profit. Same happened in the United States with Apple and with Intel and others. They continue that path and increasing their profitability worldwide, but also lead to job creations and the maintenance of jobs. So when we are thinking about this in terms of research, of course, you need to do a case study work. Depending quantitative, qualitative, you can engage with both. But questions that you should ask is trying to understand the factors behind this success or the philosophical principles even behind these place-based innovation policies, understanding the pros and cons of these interventions, and there is always possibility of identifying both sides and understanding, again, as I said in the beginning, who wins and who loses within these processes. You can also question, okay, these policies, who can access to these policies? Can a common citizen or someone that is concluding the graduation from the university, can they just go home and then fill a form and apply for this funding? Probably not. They have to enter the process. So it's important to understand Is this really supporting a new local dynamics, or is even fostering uneven developments across European regions, for example? So a kind of just hypothesizing here a number of questions that is important to keep in mind. That's very much why I try to underline in this critical slide. There are different rationales against the government intervention, and I don't want to point out here the kind of the political positions within this discussion, if more neoliberal, if completely against the neoliberalism of the market. Just let's try to analyze this as a policy per se, and the role of the state. In some cases, the government also fails, and the governments, in comparison to the private sector, they are always, at what the literature points out, they are always extreme vulnerable, because their institutions depend of the voters of the society in general, and if they don't behave in the way that the society accepts them, they will simply not be able to enter another political cycle. And the political cycles, as very much happens the same when we are talking about planning, the planning of the territory, spatial planning. It also happens within the organization of the economic landscape. So if one specific party enters the government, they embrace a number of decisions, and if something, for some reason, something goes wrong, a historical event occurs, a pandemic situation, for example, then then can eventually lead to the complete collapse of these policies, and then a new government will come, and eventually come also with new ideas, and all this process of the public intervention towards supporting of technological developments will be disrupted. They also has to do with institutional capacity. Sometimes institutions are just simply not able to embrace new ways of thinking, to embrace entrepreneurial thinking, or simply the creation of new business. There are also, in cases, the weak infrastructures, they simply don't allow a cost efficient production process, for example. And also we have also lobbies and private interests playing a role in, sometimes, in how public administrations develop their own policies. So if you embrace this topic or a similar topic, I could hypothesize several here. So what I want to bring to you, more than as telling you specific responses, my role is to call your attention to the need to analyze a topic from different domains, and put the cards on the table, the more positive, the more negative, what's happening between, those that could benefit of such interventions, and who is left behind when such interventions are applied. And then we'll enter next, more specifically, entrepreneurial region. And at this stage, I ask if you have some specific question, something that you would like to address. Not at the moment. Okay, so I think we can carry on for a couple of more minutes, and then we'll do a 5 minutes break later on. Yeah, sorry, please.
I would like to add something
Please.
to the entrepreneurial state with Tesla. You made the example with SpaceX and Tesla, and exactly. With the indirectly part, massive tax breaks, Tesla is also moving away from California to Texas because of taxes. And yeah, so it depends also on the state in the states. And yeah, they choose to remove the Tesla company to Houston, I think, and Texas.
Yes, thank you for pointing out this. It is indeed, we are talking about tax breaks from the state national government or state government. And in the US, the geography is slightly more complex than elsewhere in the world, also in comparison to the European Union. And then so Lennart also just illustrate that the role of the tax incentives in attracting business. So to the point that making a company moving from one state to another, in the case of Tesla, this also happens quite intensively after the opening of the market, the European market to China, which affects the clothing and the textile industry, garment and clothing industry. Not that the tax incentives also play the role in this delocalization of activities from, for example, northern Portugal to Romania, or northern Portugal to elsewhere in China, and then more recently from the southern Europe to the Balkans, to new member states. Tax incentives, because some of these countries and regions within, they attract the companies because of tax breaks, and they also propose, and this goes very much in line with place marketing strategies, with these regional attractiveness strategies, which they put not only the regional potentials, tangible and intangible, the availability of green spaces, for example, now plays a role in attracting companies and in attracting labor force. The availability of cultural centers, the offer of a cultural program attracts companies as well. So all of this plays a role in attracting investment. Some of them very much related with the interventions of the public government, in the improving infrastructures, but also is also here private entities. They also play a card in moving to between regions. And part of this is also come what I explore later after the entrepreneurial region here within strategic spatial plans. They also have an intervention. They also play a role in this localization or delocalization of industrial activities across states. So thank you for your question. Any other intervention? And what's happened also in this context, and the case of the United States is again a prime example, or can be taken as a prime example when we are trying to explain the entrepreneurial region, and the genesis of the concept actually comes from literature exploring the Silicon Valley success once again. And the entrepreneurial region, first let's disentangle here the geographical dimension. We are talking about metropolitan regions. You can call them metropolitan areas. There are different terminologies here within this region, and again depends if you are in Europe, if you are in Southeast Asia, or if you are in United States. When we are calling entrepreneurial region, often the literature often refers to urban regions. So we have a core urban area, urbanized, densified, and the surrounding interland, in which also housing activities, housing and other economic activities are located. So and in some contexts these are formal constituted, so that is a regional government or a regional council, and in others they are only the result of informal arrangements. So a number of actors, part of the territorial governance, come together and they decided, okay, our geographical area of intervention will be this urban region. So there is no physical or administrative boundary defining the urban region, yet there is a structure that specifically focuses on this territory. This happens quite frequently in the Nordic countries because of their there is a strong capacity of them to reach a consensus in comparison to other parts of Europe, for example. So this idea of entrepreneurial region again came from partly from urban geography, from spatial planning literature, suggesting that urban regions, cities and urban areas, they play a role in supporting policies for science, technology and innovation. They host talented workforce. The infrastructures are well developed. They can host a number of activities in there, not only in the urban area, but in the surrounding area. So there is a number of what we call our assets or spatial qualities that justify entrepreneurial activities within these territories. What's happened is that in some cases, these urban regions start entering a very successful path, and then other regions start importing these concepts. So we have these local and regional innovation policies within urban regions, such as the case of the the Silicon Valley, they start being applied indiscriminately to other regions without having the successful impact they were expecting in the beginning. So there is this tendency to do a copy and paste of behaviors, of best practice, of consolidated approaches to from one territory to another one. But this is requires, and we learned from the place-based approach, that requires a more context-specific assessment, and there is no one size fitting all, and importing without paying attention to local specificities and what a region or to the potentials of a region can lead to a complete disaster in terms of innovation policies. If you want to learn more, again, into more detail, the reasons behind the success of Silicon Valley in this publication, highly cited worldwide, is also in your archived in your ONLAT platform, and you can grasp the success of the Silicon Valley, which still today a model, an archetype, an example of this of the success of an entrepreneurial region. We are talking about here all this area between San Francisco and San Jose in the southern part in California state of the United States, and it still the territory housing or hosting the largest number of startups worldwide. So we call, and the literature addresses Silicon Valley as an example of an entrepreneurial region within an entrepreneurial state, in which again the public administration plays a determinant role, often in cooperation with more private actors, which and altogether they embrace a more neoliberal approach to innovation process and territorial developments overall. So all the major companies located in the Silicon Valley, they benefited from the state support. This is all debated in these publications. And if we went here a more theoretical dimension, trying to define entrepreneurial region, they can be defined as areas, territorial areas with high levels of entrepreneurship and innovation. So it's important that not we are not talking about dispersed activities across a territory, but concentrated entrepreneurial activities, and not only this cannot be measured only by for example, the number of patents registered in that region. Is necessary to understand a number of other factors. That's why then the researchers try to build frameworks to understand the dimensions of an entrepreneurial region. We have one framework here. I will show you another one later on, and researchers point out these are the pillars sustaining an entrepreneurial region: the availability of resources, the vision, and the coordinated activity. So indeed, high concentration levels of entrepreneurship and innovation in one region leads to classify the region as an entrepreneurial area, but other elements are needed. It's necessary a coordinated number of activities. Is necessary to develop this common vision involving different actors within that region, and is necessary to have a strong commitment across the governance structure, public and private entities, as we define governance. And we are referring here to regions, but also smaller places. You can define an entrepreneurial region in smaller places within a country, for example, and this varies in terms of dimension, varies across the world, and varies even across the European Union. Another fundamental element that is not integrated directly in this framework is the role of the triple helix actors. These triple helix actors are, again, the government, the public entities, but also universities and the industry. And the examples of previous lecture, I believe they help to underline the knowledge flows that are necessary to support, to pave the way for an entrepreneurial region to emerge. And that's why in this slide I try to disentangle this framework of these researchers, trying to highlight that, okay, the success, or the success, emergence, the existence of an entrepreneurial region depends of the resources, these routines that we talked about earlier in the path dependency theory, skills, knowledge, the physical infrastructures. Is not also necessary a collective vision, and this vision being shared across different players within the region, and again having this willingness to embrace the entrepreneurial activity at the heart of their interventions. And then the reason I've put this frame here is to highlight the role of the universities and of the knowledge flows between universities and industry, and the industry that is was left behind, left out of this framework, but is important to when we are studying an entrepreneurial region. We cannot forget the role, the agency, the capacity of universities to be involved in economic development of specific territories, and also even on the way they are organized. There are a number of examples in Europe and also elsewhere in the world. I try to summarize a couple of them here with examples, and I think now is 11 o'clock. We will wrap up at 11:05. So we do a 4 minutes break here if this is okay. So see you at 11:05. All right, let's continue to the second part, and thank you for being here for this second part also, and engaging with the discussions. And there is this interesting video that you can watch later that underlines the reasons behind these cities and urban regions being classified as European entrepreneurial regions. Well, this is not a solid concept coming from scientific research. Is an intervention from the European Union, an award that incentivizes regions within the European Union, member states to seek entrepreneurship, to seek to implement policies by their own, necessarily with funding from the European Union, to boost the entrepreneurial-led growth within their territories. And we have cases here from Portugal to Finland and Poland. And the video illustrates the domains, the vectors they follow, and also partly the reasons they enter this competition and they apply for this award as being classified the European Entrepreneurial Region. A couple of examples. Here I will point out three randomly. Well, not necessarily randomly, but then the idea was to illustrate these different vectors of an entrepreneurial region. But first, to understand the definition of the entrepreneurial region within the European Union, we have to explore a little bit the guidelines of this award, of the process of applying for the entrepreneurial region of the year. And in this specifically, there is one call open at the moment, and summarizing the various pages of the guidelines. The intention is to boost entrepreneurship. We have been discussing about this, and the role of small and medium-sized enterprises in supporting territorial development in the post COVID-19 crisis. So to support to some extent also the resilience of these regions through entrepreneurship. We have here three cases. One of them, Hamburg, in which the tax incentives or the access to credit or loans plays a fundamental role. But this is an example from 2011. I'm not fully sure if the package in specifically this early phase found the German expression here is still a valid option for young generations, young people, and potential entrepreneurs to apply for. But then they reach this award by providing this specific funding intended to support equity of capital base of young and innovative small and medium-sized enterprises in the early stages. So the goal was not to foster startups, but primarily to support companies in the early stages of their businesses. And one of them pointed out in this publication which I can deposit in your OLAT platform, is located in the surrounding area of Berlin, in the Berlin-Brandenburg urban region, and it's called Meta Bologna. It's dedicated to research and development within medicines, with drug development for medical purposes, and they are also organize a number of activities fostering knowledge exchange across the region and beyond the region as well. It is important. So this is within the Brandenburg region, and is often communicated, and one of their strategic plans covers all this urban region, Berlin, Brandenburg. Maybe some of you know better about also these definitions. I have done some work in urban regions in Europe, in also in Germany, and one of my colleagues was analyzing Berlin, Brandenburg, while I analyze Hamburg and Stuttgart and Hanover. But the fact that this is also works as a marketing strategy. If the CEO of Meta Bolon goes to China to try to foster or to engage with the potential customers, or try to foster some cooperation, if they simply communicate, well, we are located in Potsdam, an entrepreneur or an investor in China probably won't be able to associate the geographical location. So, and if they present themselves, we are located in Berlin, Brandenburg urban region, these will eventually can foster certain attachment first to the region, because Berlin will be easier identify by these investors, and then can foster a cooperation or the engagement with new customers. So there is a little of regional attractiveness and marketing on the usage of the terminology of some of a specific region. They are completely outside of the physical boundaries of the Berlin Brandenburg urban region. They may use it for marketing purpose, or to be more attractive in international markets, not necessarily within the European one, because people will probably recognize their location quite easily, but elsewhere in the world, these may pose some difficulties. And then they are currently being developed different drugs and pesticides, in my point of view, to support medical processes in different kind of domains. Another example, and this one is different than the Brandenburg one, specifically focus on one of the vertices of this triple helix. It tends to foster and strengthen the cooperation between the universities in the Comunidad Autónoma de Valencia in Spain. So the 5U CV scheme intends to foster entrepreneurship and entrepreneurship spirit across the universities located in the Comunidad Valenciana. So the triple helix here plays a fundamental role in fostering this in innovation processes. This a case a bit more recent from 2015. Another case from Lisbon, also more recent case. So again, we have one more oriented towards founding and supporting the small and medium enterprises through credit. Another one more focused on the fostering entrepreneurship between universities, and another one focused on supporting this incubator of ideas that will lead to businesses, or the supporting the creation of firms and a new business from the scratch through these startup programs. This specifically focus in the Portuguese capital of Lisbon, and they win this award of entrepreneurial region because they created these two platforms and the different physical spaces associated to these two platforms to attract and to foster micro enterprises, small and medium enterprises, and foster entrepreneurship among the youth community in the Portuguese capital. So the overall aim was to support entrepreneurs in the development of business ideas, going from one idea to a possible businesses. And only a couple of statistics here available in this publication. they receive a large number of applications, 1,500, but in the end they could only support 193 startups that applied for this package. So this can be analyzed as being a success. These are positive numbers. Eventually 193 business could have been created, then will lead, which will eventually lead to job creation as well, but can also raise a number of critics towards the process. Maybe part of these 193 are already entrepreneurs with some established position. So I don't really know. I couldn't explore the criteria for applying into one of these programs, the Startup Lisbon or the Lisbon Incubator Network. So this requires a case study analysis, but maybe some of these entrepreneurs, they have already a strong background. Maybe they have a family supporting them. So we can also question the fairness, the justice of this kind of programs intending to support entrepreneurship. Maybe some of them, they are even connected to some established elites in the region. Sorry about that, or they are already part of advantaged social groups. So there are different dimensions here to explore when we are investigating the true capacity, the true capabilities of this kind of innovation policies, being them intended to support entrepreneurship or only technological developments. And in the end, we can have these kind of programs funded by public money, fostering uneven development and even fostering social inequalities within a specific region. And it is in this context of critique that I always like to bring examples from less represented geographies, and I always invite the students and or attendees of a conference to look of what is going on in the global south, for example. And I'm talking here about Latin America, parts of Asia and Africa. It's important to understand how these concepts from advantaged countries, developed countries already with established institutions and with high quality infrastructures capable of attracting investment, of attracting a talented workforce, how they deal with such a concepts. Do they try to translate them purely to their territories? In some cases they did that, which was they entered some sort of Silicon Valley trap, which I will point out in one of the slides further. But they also have their own approach, and their own approach, one of, or the most relevant one, to the best of my knowledge, has been developed by a colleague of mine, Arno Morrison. And the entrepreneurial region focus on the Medellin city in Colombia, and he addresses the entrepreneurial region concept through the lenses of evolutionary economic geography. Is also a very interesting reading, also archived in your OLAT platform, and he addresses this. First, that we have to embrace, try to generalize the concept in knowledge periphery regions through the case study of Medellin. And in comparison to the earlier slide of that framework in which inter-regional knowledge is highlighted, here Morrison highlights the extra-regional scientific and technological knowledge supporting an entrepreneurial region in Colombia. So this is related with somehow the incapacity of the region, of the urban region of Medellin, to generate own knowledge fostering technology. So they have to, he suggests in a theoretical framework, suggests that these regions within classified within the knowledge periphery, or lagging behind, or less advantaged territories, less advantaged regions, they should also seek extra regional knowledge and not only look into the knowledge produced within the boundaries of the territory. So he points out here that's the uniqueness of the framework, the extra regional knowledge. When a certain territory is not capable of using their own laws, they should seek alliances in other territories. They should build synergies and seek competences elsewhere, so they can boost then entrepreneurial activity in their territory. So it's an interesting framework in which builds from the basis of the knowledge innovation systems, in which the role of the scientific knowledge is fundamental, and also the absorptive capacity of the institution, this capacity of learning and transforming ideas, transforming knowledge into practical applications, and also the fundamental role of the extra-regional knowledge that we eventually will lead to new industrial path development and will help them to catch up with more advantageous regions. So here Morrison summarizes that this is not an out-of-the-box idea of feeding from extra-regional scientific knowledge. Already developed countries such as Japan, they use this strategy to foster innovation and entrepreneurship some years ago. The same happened in China, so they also rely on knowledge or scientific knowledge coming from other regions to foster their own entrepreneurial led growth process. And he points out that for this to work is necessary to boost the absorptive capacity, this the ability to learn and implement this technology from elsewhere. We are not talking here about coping technologies from other territories, but learning processes, learning how to engage, learning methodologies, trying to acquire new skills, and then being capable of absorbing, taking the advantage of this process and applying them in their territories in favor or in support of an overarching territorial development. And the example explored intensively in this publication is the Ruta Medellin, an innovation center that physically exists in this Colombian city, located northern Bogota, and it's a very curious case. If you are interested, and I invite you also to read this publication. It's an interesting case if you can analyze it through the lenses of path dependencies, for example. And there are a number of literature pointing out that the success of Medellin in terms of urban development, they call the development of Medellin as an urban miracle. How they could embrace transformation through times and overcome crime rates, overcome high levels of corruption within the public administration, to transform the city to what it is these days, a city capable of attracting foreign direct investment. And Morrison points out the key role of this innovation center in generating entrepreneurial activity and giving and paving the way for new firms to be located in Medellin. So they also call that from a murder capital to the model city. And then in this publication, the evolution of the city from the mining activity to the knowledge economy city of today is underlined in depth, to the point of commenting even the role of the narco traffic in the city. Even the name of Pablo Escobar appears in the publication as being as in a way to justify why the city could overcome all these weaknesses in terms of governance and be positioned in the global competitive arena, and being able to generate new businesses and attract foreign investment as well. So certainly for us economic geographers, this evolution is important, but understanding the basis of how Medellin came to be the knowledge city of today is also fundamental. And he points out here the role I try to bring now. I'm focused only on the knowledge city, and he points out the role of an element I hopefully I can bring even later in the lecture, that the role of spatial plans, of master plans intended to support the overall development of the territory. And the basis of the knowledge city started by revitalization of the public spaces that are in this context of cities with in which the weather tends to favor outdoor activities. These public spaces, that is another component of literature, explores how they can foster can foster ideas, how the communication and the exchange of ideas between the citizens can lead to new ideas. But of course, per se, it's possible to have very nice conversations in one of these green areas, but then it's necessary to have another kind of infrastructures and background to go from an idea to business. And Medellin could do this in a strategic way through different kind of strategic planning instruments. Then after revitalizing the public spaces, they were able to foster the creation of entrepreneurship centers and innovation centers, and there are a number of them, including the so-called Ruta N, regional innovation agency located in the center of the city, which is then taken in this publication as the example of this evolution process from revitalizing public spaces to the creation of physical infrastructures supporting entrepreneurialism within the city. And the Route N is classified here as the most ambitious one. And along with these physical interventions in the city, in the urban region, in terms of different infrastructures, there was also what in the publications classify the domains of education, research, the linkage between them, the strong implementation and the commitment of the government and other actors in solidifying and in strengthening all these interventions. So the success of this Ruta N as a regional innovation agency, and then the success of Medellin as an entrepreneurial region cannot only be justified by one single domain, but also an exchange or the result of work taken within research and developments, within education institutions, and also the role of the government, the regional government and the municipal government in this context. So we have strategic plans, so paving the way for physical infrastructures. We have a number of more intangible interventions supporting the entrepreneurship, which then led to so-called Medellin's regional innovation system, in which the Ruta N is taken as a model, and they tell that this Ruta N it was the result of a long-term process, and they have been inspired by other examples from elsewhere. But here in the more they apply a more place-based approach to the development of the working philosophy of the Ruta N was adapted to the conditions of the Medellin. So indeed, they pointed out, they look at the MIT case, they look at the Toronto and the Barcelona cases as innovation cities. They learn from their best practice, and then they were able to apply it in the case of Medellin. And then currently the Ruta N has also different domains of intervention. They are focused on fostering innovation. They are fostering in improving business, mainly based on not on traditional activities, but knowledge-based business, and to foster also an innovation culture within the urban region in a way that allows this to be a sustainable, innovative intervention, not only to fill a need in a specific time frame and then something else will come, but in a way that remains towards the future and involves the society and the society in general. So the framework this framework differs from an earlier on by bringing the extra regional actors here, in which the author includes also private companies, other public institutions, other elements of the civic society influencing the developments of the Ruta N, instead of having only a triple helix. In the case of Medellin, because of this strong sense of place and the cultural the attachment that exists between the civil society and the development of the city, the author calls for the quadruple helix as justifying the success of the entrepreneurial region in Medellin. And the missing helix here is that civil society playing a fundamental role in supporting the development of the Ruta and innovation model. So we are talking about policies, they play the role, strategic planning, they play the role, the overarching innovation system also play the role, and also the willingness of different actors across this framework to act and to behave towards a common goal that is supporting technological innovation and fostering the knowledge-based economy in Medellin. And currently, they still having, or they still relying intensively in the knowledge flows across the world, so the so-called extra-regional knowledge, and they do this by participating of conferences, by fostering cooperation with other actors located elsewhere, and learning from best practice all over the world, from Australia to Europe and North America. And this is this is detailed in this publication, which is an interesting case of how a city in the global south could learn from cases in developed countries, but then apply their own model and benefiting from the regional potentials. In this case, a sense of responsibility and commitment towards this project, to solidify it, to make it sustainable towards the future. In terms of summary, what we can learn from the entrepreneurial region is that is not a magic solution to foster economic development in a territory. It requires a context-sensitive approach. It requires the involvement of a number of actors. It requires their willingness to participate in different kind of interventions. Only in this way the model can be legitimized, because it's rooted within the society, is rooted across these different domains of the quadruple helix: government, universities, the private sector, and the civil society. And if we put this in a more visionary thinking in terms of conceptual constructs here, partly of this entrepreneurial region, and if the region enters a stage of development in which comes to be completely independent in that development process, we can talk about new regionalism. So regions that gain a capacity of deciding by themselves independently of the governance structure. We are talking about in the context in which there is no formal regional government, for example, but then they have a solid institutional tissue capable of paving the way for an endogenous regional development process. And the same happened in the same level of decision-making capacity at the municipal level. This is still a very embryonic concept within the urban geography literature. And so the summary of this slide is that the regional and innovation agencies in the global south, we can learn a lot from them because they are flexible, they are often detached from the political sphere, and in this context they have a certain autonomy capable of fostering entrepreneurship and innovation processes in a much higher, in less complexity manner, but in a much higher level in comparison to more formal entities. And we saw in this case of Medellin that strategic spatial planning and the territorial planning, territorial is often a term applied in Latin countries, play the role in this creation of the physical creation of centers fostering this entrepreneurship. And we'll discuss a couple of examples in the next minutes in Europe and elsewhere. Do you have an intervention at this stage that you like to be clarified? So we talked about, from evolutionary economic geography perspectives, about this path dependency, path creation, lock-ins, different ways of intervening in the territory, some of them leading to the to a more resilient territories, construct regional advantage, place-based innovation policies, smart specialization strategy we will discuss next week, as well as corporate spatial/social responsibility. The difference will come clear next week. There is also another domain which is I would say less attractive for pure economic geographers, but more attractive to researchers like me, which build which I try to bridge concepts from spatial planning, pure spatial planning, and economic geography. And in this domain, I'm particularly interested in strategic spatial plans, and I try to justify in the next slides why these strategic spatial plans are important to understand the organization of the economic landscape, the key subject within economic geography, because they impact the organization, the planning, and the management of economic activities in the landscape. So I'm not talking about this classic approach to spatial planning. I'm not entirely sure if you are familiar with the planning domain within the geography. My background is geography and planning, the combination of both. And it's important to understand this transition from a classic spatial planning approach to a planning approach more focused on creating economic dynamics in territories, as a turn to urban entrepreneurialism within spatial planning. And this is trying to translate this urban entrepreneurialism turn can be translated as the intervention of private actors within the organization of the economic landscape, primarily by promoting the economic development in territories, and they use strategic planning instruments to promote this economic development, in some cases to foster a renewal of economic activities, in other cases not to foster the renewal but to foster a completely structural economic structural change in a specific territory. And this led to the appearance of a more strategic approach to spatial planning, so doing the intervention not within a 5-year time frame, but more in the long run process. And the difference between the classic spatial planning and the strategic spatial planning is the long-term thinking, is this capacity of building a vision that can be applied in a present day, but also remain towards the future. And we are talking about 10, 20, and sometimes 50 years. So we are talking about an envisioning process. And this is quite common across Europe and also and elsewhere in the world, even in the global south. There are examples in Lyon, in Oslo, in Vienna, and these strategic plans, they are focused, they are multidisciplinary, and they try to improve environmental condition. They try to improve the housing housing offer of a certain territory, but also focus in creating physical spaces for the development of economic activity or the renewal of these economical activities. And a number of examples across Europe. We have the Milan case study case. We have Cardiff. We have all the Nordic capitals involved in strategic spatial plans. Copenhagen, through the Danish business authorities, the one responsible for the strategic planning in Copenhagen. We have the Stockholm, very well known as well. We have the Helsinki, so a number of urban regions in Europe focus on developing their strategic spatial plans, and also a number of cases in Germany as well. And again, to try to here emphasize the definition of urban region, sometimes we have a formal defined urban region with a regional council playing the role in the organization of the territory. In other cases, we are talking about informal arrangements, such as the case of Oslo Akershus urban region, which is the result of an informal arrangement between the authorities of Oslo and the surrounding municipalities, working together to develop this regional plan towards 2030, 2050. So the primary goal is 2030, and they established the guidelines towards 2050. And you see here the dynamics they try to create by placing the core development within the capital city of Oslo, and extending through transportation, through the improvement of green infrastructures, low location of industrial areas and housing in the surrounding area of Oslo. all these urban regions, they approach strategic spatial planning differently, and they primarily try to address their prime needs. In Dublin, they are primarily focused to create space to host a growing population. So they deal with housing availability first, but also affordability, trying to minimize the impacts and the social inequalities. And because the surrounding area of Dublin still is dominated by a number of rural activities, they try to minimize the uneven development across the urban region. Oslo and Oslo as an urban region, Oslo and Akershus, they because they are in the different stage of developments, they engage a little more with improvement of the quality of life to support the business that are located in this new urban area of the city, try to help them to attract labor force by improving the public space and the green areas, as well as the transportation sector within the city and across the urban region. So overall, the goal is to make also Akershus an attractive region and a more competitive region, capable of attracting investment, new business, and workforce. And Neil, would you like to intervene?
Yes, I have an understanding question. Last or 2 years ago, some friends of mine went to Copenhagen. We from Germany to Copenhagen. I wasn't there, but they told me that the Copenhagen streets are focused on bicycles more than on cars for the last 20 years, and you can really feel this bicycle approach to a city. And my question is, does this strategic planning also include the bicycle approach to a city, like making it more attractive and more affordable for everyday citizens, and like creating an urban feeling towards a city?
Yes, yeah, that domain is present primarily in the Nordic countries and the more developed urban regions. And your friends are certainly right about the Copenhagen case, which I have the example later on, and I may jump the text slides here to focus on the example. Indeed, they are also concerned about improving the sustainable mobility within the city. And this is a photo of mine. Is in 2016 when I did this case study work in 14 urban regions in Europe. I had the chance to travel to them and interview stakeholders in all these cities I'm pointing out here, and they improved the cycle line across this new so-called the barcode. This area is called the barcode of Oslo. All the cycling path between this new urban area to the city center, to the train station, has been improved. And there are other complementary plans attached to this strategic spatial plan. Something I should underline, that some of these strategic spatial plans, they are legally binding. So the municipalities, they have to comply with a strategic plan. So their master plans or local plans, they should respect the strategic spatial plan. In other cases, they work as a guideline. So ideally, that's the case of Dublin. Ideally, we want to minimize the differences between the rural and the urban areas. But the municipalities, they can comply or not comply with this rule. And my findings underline that in the case of Dublin, the private actors, they play a fundamental role, a more determinant role in the spatial development in comparison to Oslo or to the case of Copenhagen. Indeed, also in Stockholm, in Copenhagen, Oslo, in Stuttgart as well, and where else? In Vienna, the cycling paths and improving the sustainable mobility is a core preoccupation of the entities in charge of these strategic spatial plans, thinking about the quality of life of the citizens as well, but also in making the city attractive to the workforce and other investments from foreign entities. And there is, in this case, I may jump to the Copenhagen one again. Improving the quality of life is a core preoccupation of the entities in Copenhagen. So, trying to jump this to go to the example, these two slides underline the definition of strategic spatial plans. I told you they are overarching, covering different years. They embrace this strategic perspective towards the future. A number of examples, some of them again as a guideline, such as the one in Dublin and the one in Lyon, legally binding, so local municipalities, they have to comply, and there are different approaches again within these strategic plans. We also have strategic plans elsewhere in the world, a well-known one, the Portland one in Canada and also in Singapore. And we also have countries with a less consolidated planning practice trying to engage with strategic plans. We have and in this specific context of the Qatar and Saudi Arabia, they are specifically focused on improving the knowledge economy in the countries. And this is a recent publication of mine together with a colleague from Iran. We critically assess this approach of Qatar and Saudi Arabia as a strategic spatial plan and their intention towards the knowledge economy. In some cases, when the consolidated planning practice is not consolidated at all, and there is this importation of models, of development models from elsewhere, these urban regions, they entered, or countries, they can enter the Dubaization trap or the Silicon somewhere trap. So they try to implement the model without paying attention to the specificities of the territory. I will bring this to the next lecture just to underline one of my favorite strategic plans, indeed the Copenhagen one, very famous because of the 5 fingers, precisely the spatial development in the urban region goes along the 5 fingers of a hand, is considered a consolidated planning practice because the plan, it exists like this since 1947, and they combine the development of transportation paths, including cycling, along the fingers, as well as the development of housing and economic activities. And what I wanted to point it out, that together with these more physical elements of the territory, they also try to place the right business in the right location, so creating opportunities for business to flourish. And what they offer the green spaces, and they offer transportation corridors. And we reached the time, and then I still have the attractiveness strategies within specific case studies, which I will bring, of course, in the next lecture, because links well with what I want to point out: corporate spatial responsibility. And some note that I would like to underline here. I hope I didn't forget to put this to register. Sorry. Something I want to underline is that if there is some subject, if we reach the 1st of June and without approaching one of the topics, then I will record a 10 minutes lecture to explain a specific concept, and I will inform you in advance via email. Do you have any question? That you would like to be clarified? So if not, I wish you a good rest of the week and a good weekend, and I will see you next week.
Yeah, good weekend.
Okay, good weekend. Ciao. Thank you for coming.